Hello everybody, welcome back to the Stokes Sound Podcast. I am your host Ed Stokes, and today I have an amazing person on with us as our special guest, Henry Watkins. Henry, please introduce yourself.
Hey man, well thank you for the kind introduction. My name's Henry Watkins. I'm predominantly a mixing engineer, occasional tracking engineer if it comes around, and currently based in Bangkok, Thailand.
Fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about mix prep, going through kind of from start to finish. If I was an artist, to give you a track and talking through the whole process and your mixing template as well. For the listeners that don't know Henry, he is absolutely incredible. He's worked on lots of amazing music, and so feel free to if there's any of the listeners that will know any of the tracks at all, feel free to let them know as well, Henry.
Sure. I mean, I'm definitely the definition of like right place, right time. I'll definitely admit that, straight away. Amazing.
Well, you know exactly what you're doing. So, Henry, talk to us about kind of your process then, basically, and how do you mix, or what your mixing template to get you to the tracks that you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, without making it a cliche, I guess the mix kind of starts even before you get the files. Just complete communication with the client. Like, what do they want? What's the goal? And then even just selfishly, making things more efficient for us. Just making sure that the files are kind of the way that we would like when we receive them, and there's no surprises down the road. And I think mix prep can definitely like improve the mix itself. If it's kind of efficiently laid out before you even start, it makes things quicker, and you're kind of more inclined to be creative and to kind of go a bit further, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I always find when I get sessions to mix as well is naming file names. I think is one of the main ones that always pop up where you're like, right, well, you've just slowed me down about 4 hours.
Oh man, there is nothing more depressing than you get a big old Google Drive link, and it's like 100 audio 01s. It's like, this is going to be a long day.
Do you know what?
It kills me, man.
I used to be like, right, I'm going to go and listen for and label them. Now I've got to the point where I'm like, nope, that's going straight into the client. You can name them properly and send them back to me, and then I'll do it.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've got like a little PDF that I kind of send out, and I swear, like, the top line is like, please make sure the files are neatly labeled, and no one gives a shit anyway. No one listens to that. They just kind of bypass that bit, and I'm kind of like, well, sure, all right, I'll just make it work. It is what it is.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So, when someone comes with you then with a track and they have a reference, are you the kind of mixing engineer that kind of will listen to the reference and try and kind of, I guess, do the same kind of thing, but just in a better way? Or are you like, no, that's the reference, I'm a mixing engineer and this is my sound and this is how I think it should sound? What kind of route do you go down?
I mean, that's a really good point. I guess, like, kind of early on, I'll say to them, like, what's the goal? Do you want me to kind of have free reign to do what I think sounds cool? Or do you want me to kind of direct it in a certain place? If the reference is like, they're like, yo, we love the reference and we want to get as close to it as we can, then cool, that's the goal. I'm purely kind of, trying to direct it in that place. Or they might say, yeah, like, it's up to you. Kind of, here are the stems, do what you think sounds best. And that's kind of, they're my favorite ones, because then you kind of get to do what feels natural first time round. But, every song's different.
Of course. But do you find that you're doing the same kind of mix preparation on every song? Like, obviously, some people have their favorite plugins, some people have their favorite synths, I guess, that they use and they're producing. For sure. Is your mix prep the same every mix, no matter what you could be doing or where you could be taking the mix? The mix prep will always stay the same. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I definitely do a lot of genre hopping, but I think like the same the same steps apply, and normally the same issues apply as well. I remember on the previous episode, you and Pat were talking about how editing can kind of be a mixing tool, and whether we like it or not, it's also kind of part of the mixing process now. And like, I totally stand by that. I think like the amount of times where if you just do a little bit of like vocal lining, a little bit of time adjusting, it can make the song sound better even without reaching for a single EQ or compressor. I really believe that.
I'm so glad you said that. That's how I know that you're a great mixer.
But it's true that like I feel like, but it's true like I swear that like the mix prep can, you know, be like 20% of the final result. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I'm my mix prep is pretty extreme. Like I'll go through and I'll if I hear any vocal like tuning or timing, I'll go and tidy it up. If I hear any drum issues, I'll go and check them out. Like one of my biggest peeves is when like you have like an acoustic recording and then they've like layered some some samples on the grid, but then like the acoustic drums like aren't like matched with it, and then it's just like it's like a flam phasey central. It's like, oh Christ, here we go.
Do you know what is interesting though, right? Is like you talk to like some people and you know they don't want everything to the grid, and I get that, and I was saying in the last episode that obviously you've got to, you know, have that kind of groove. That's great if everyone's kind of recording it and are doing it at the same time, and it's not in time, but then the kick drum is hitting out of time as well with the acoustic. But like what you said, but the thing I'm finding is people will, like you just said, they'll program drums, then they'll record acoustic guitar and go, yeah, I'm not going to put it in time because I want the live feel. But you're like, but then the drums are so bang on time, that live feel is going to just sound out of time, in my opinion. I'm not saying that is, you know, the case for everything, but that's why I'm the type of person, I just snap everything to grid. It's just easier, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I mean, like, you know, I guess if everything kind of follows the same rhythmic like template, then it's all good, you know. But like you said, if one of them is like very straight and then like the other one is like really loose, it feels a bit like amateur.
It's and you know what? It's so interesting because I've noticed this, right? I was mixing a track last week, and as everyone does these days, a lot of the producers are using splice drum samples. And if you actually go into the view window in Pro Tools and really look at the waveform, you'll find that most of the splice samples don't actually start when it hits. There's a bit of kind of gap between the hit. And so people just think, oh, it's just a sample. I've just dragged it in and it's all perfect. And actually, as the song goes on, the drums are kind of slowly getting more out of time because the other things are all snapped to, let's say, 120 BPM. But the samples aren't quite. And as the song goes on, it just gets even worse and worse. So I find when I'm getting tracks to mix, like the first thing I look for is, right, like what you just said, is timing as well.
Man, I bet that happens way too often for you, I bet.
Is all the time. But as you said earlier, it's part of the process, isn't it, as a mixer? So
definitely. You know. Then I guess that's the kind of benefit of you being a kind of producer / mixer. You're kind of like on both sides of the spectrum. Like you're kind of, you know, thinking, well, I'm a producer, so these are the kind of things that I would do, so I know what to look out for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you do pick up certain like production elements where you're like, okay, I know what's happened here. You know, I'll fix it. But you know, not always. And you know, lots of tracks I get, you know, are perfect and they come in absolutely fantastic, and there's not much that you have to do. And I'm sure likewise for yourself. But let's talk a little bit about kind of your process, Henry, then. So if you go, if I was to send you obviously stems, talk a little bit about your Pro Tools session template. For the listeners that don't know, Henry does work in Pro Tools, and so explain that technical side of it, because I know that the listeners are going to want to know that.
Yeah, I love the technical stuff.
It's all for hours, man.
My template is like, it's so important to me. Like I couldn't work without it now. For me, my template has no color, it has no sound, it doesn't like add anything to the tracks. It's purely like routing and buses and auxes and all that good stuff. Because like, do you find like with the kind of old school guys like your CLA and all that, they rabbit on about how their console speeds up their workflow because they know where everything is, and because, you know, the vocals are always on channel 24, so it's quick for them.
Yeah.
But I get that. I totally get what they mean. So my template has the same layout for every song. So it just means that like when I import the files, I know that my drums at the top, vocals at the bottom, and it's just super quick to get around. There's no like
color code as well.
Thinking or everything is the same for every song.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a monster template. Like I've got like
can I have it?
Yeah, man. It's fine. It's all yours, man.
So all your secrets come out.
Oh, mate, not at all. But for like, I have like every possible instrument that I can think of, like pre-labeled and made up on there, like acoustic drums, and then like all the possible mics I might get, and then electric drums, bass guitars, synth basses, 808s, everything that I might have or I might import is in this template. And then once I've, got all the tracks in, I'll just delete the stuff that I'm not using. But then it just means that there's no guessing. I know exactly where everything's going to be. And then because everything is like the tracks are pre-labeled, even though, maybe the audio is stamped as audio 01, at least I know that the track itself is going to be called like Kick In.
Right, so that's how you get around it then.
Exactly. There's always a way. Actually, just quickly, how often do you get like stereo files, even if they're mono, just out of interest?
All the time. Bass guitar's the biggest one.
Oh man, it kills me, man. It kills me.
A mono bass guitar DI is suddenly stereo, and you're like, well, see, here's a question to you then.
All right.
In my eyes, I'm like, well, I know it's in stereo, but the actual track is mono the actual instrument is mono anyway. So I know a lot of people that will split to mono if you're working in Pro Tools, and they'll mono it.
Yeah.
I don't bother doing that. I just leave it stereo because it kind of already is mono. Mate, am I wrong to say that?
I guess it makes no difference. I guess it makes no difference technically. I think
yes,
it's more just...
I do. I have done. Yeah, I do notice that a lot. I've thrown you there by saying that I just leave it.
No, mate, not at all. Like for me, if my template was like set up with like stereo tracks, I would just leave it as it is. But because I have like mono tracks, I'll just split to mono and just deal with it.
That's because you do it the proper way.
I think there is some program. No, not at all. I think there is some program. Like there is some program where you can like import the files and it will detect if it's like stereo or true mono, and it will like do it for you.
Yeah.
I have to find out the name of it, but there's some really cool program which does it. But I think it's I haven't got it yet, but that might be something to invest in.
I'll have a look at that. I mean, sometimes I do find if I'm getting for example, if I'm getting low end, I prefer mono. I mean, I know nowadays in a lot of the pop music they do have a lot of wider stereo synths, bottom endy. But I do find that what I will do is if I have a stereo bass guitar, I will, the pan pots in Pro Tools, I'll just put them both to 12 o'clock. So it's already mono, or I'll just leave them left and right. It just depends what I'm feeling, to be honest, and what day it is. But at the end of the day, like you say, like if it is a true mono source of instrument, it is going to be mono, anyway. But like you say, if you've got mono tracks set up, then obviously it's not going to work, is it? You're going to have to split the mono.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, like, it makes no difference, really, does it? It's just me being picky, so it's kind of self-inflicted pain right there.
Well, you're being what would you call an audio person that's like really like I forgot the name now.
Like pedantic? No.
Yeah, well, that is one word, but then you are right by doing that. No, there's another word. Oh, I can't remember now.
Yeah, maybe write like by the textbook, but it makes no difference sonically. So I'm just making more work for myself.
Yeah, but but then sometimes I do find that plugins will work better in certain things. So that is another reason actually why I will sometimes split to mono if I'm, especially if I'm doing parallel compression, and I don't, and I need it to be, literally direct mono. Then cool. I will.
Just a quick question to you then, because it'd be interesting to see if it's a similar workflow.
Okay.
If you do get that kind of drum scenario where you've got your drums on two separate grids, let's say, like how do you kind of go about like aligning them? Do you kind of like make one the lead and kind of like chase the other, or what do you do?
If let's say the kick drum is.
So the drum samples are kind of on the grid, and then the acoustic drums are just, loose. Like, do you kind of like snap it all to the grid?
Tabs the transient, or I use that beat detective, and
Classic.
snap everything. The problem is though, I do find with Beat Detective and all the anything that's automatic, anything that has automatic on it worries me, and not worries me in the sense I don't trust it, but like I don't know. I do double check. I'm a bit of a warrior. Like,
no, for sure, man.
I will always be like, oh, is that kick drum in time? Is it actually in time? Or does it, like, so I will find that I will do tabs to transient, or I'll use Beat Detective, but I'll only use like the main source of the Beat Detective on the kick and snare, and let the overheads kind of play a little bit free. Kind of.
Oh, cool. So like you don't group the mics. You kind of leave a few natural.
Now, I actually learned this off a producer of mix called Greg Wells. And
love the guy.
I saw a video of him online, and that's where I learned it from him from. And he was saying that to keep the drums natural, especially like the overheads, like you just leave the overheads, but just have, or do you know what? I hope I'm saying this right. What it was he was doing was, but he made everything aligned to the kick and the snare. He didn't snap everything to the grid. It was more snapping the kick and the snare to the grid, but leaving certain hi-hats or certain overheads kind of a bit more free. And that's kind of what I started doing. I started grouping just certain parts of it and not doing the others. Now, obviously, you can run into some phase issues, but I haven't really had an issue with it so far.
Well, if it sounds good, it is good. Simple as that, really.
Yeah, but if there is phasing, there's phasing. So yeah, like I say, if it does sound, So I kind of have been doing like that. However, I used to group everything. Yeah, I mean, is that what you do then?
Yeah.
Are you grouping everything?
Yeah, like kind of grouping it all to the grid's kind of like the basic version that I do. But then the other thing that I like to do, which might be a bit long-winded now in comparison to your way of doing it, is I'll just ask the producer for like the individual like samples, like kick, snare, and toms, whatever, and then I'll just put them on a trigger track, and then there's of the acoustic kick and snare, and then just line them up that way.
Oh yeah.
So like if they're playing the same rhythm, So if they're playing the same rhythm, I'll just ask them for the individual sample, and then I'll just put it on a trigger track.
And then you just snap? Oh, you don't. Well, you wouldn't even need to snap it.
And then it's all so it's all good to go.
Oh, that's a great way. Yeah. I mean, I sometimes because I do use the slate trigger on the drums, but I find that I'm guessing though you're snapping your actual acoustic drums bang in time though before the samples, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on the source. Like if the drums already sound pretty good, I might just snap the electric samples to the acoustic drums.
I see what you mean. Okay,
because kind of what you mentioned earlier about like the drums will be this way and then the other instruments are kind of a little bit all over the place. If they've all recorded the instruments to the acoustic drums, then it makes less work for me if I kind of just follow the acoustic drums rather than, trying to chase the electric drums.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just kind of the way I do it. It could be long-winded, but I guess it works enough.
So if you, whatever works, I guess. So if you
exactly.
Then, so you've done your sessions, you've obviously put all your tracks within your template. I mean, if you can just give us a brief overview of what your template kind of is and what you're doing. Like, do you have a drum bus? Do you have a parallel drum? Your auxes. I mean, I'm sure that's like a really long thing to explain everything that you've got.
Yeah,
but just like a general knowledge so that listeners can kind of follow where you are within the mix preparations before you start mixing.
I'll try to make my long-winded template kind of streamlined.
Amazing.
It's pretty kind of all in one. Like maybe it's the same for you. I'm kind of mastering everything that I mix as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of do it all in one session. I've got like a dedicated master at the top.
Yeah.
And then like a mix bus underneath it.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll have all of my stems as VCAs like next, which I can then at the end just commit and then that's my stems done. So everything will feed those VCAs, which are just groups of like, acoustic drums, electric drums, sound effects, bass, that kind of thing. Everything's kind of like, together at the top.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gets like more detailed as it goes down. It goes to the kind of individual mics. Everything kind of has its own like instrument bus, let's say. And then also I like to, in my template, have a couple of effect sends good to go for every sound as well. There'll be empty tracks always, but I find that for me, I'm kind of lazy, to be honest. And if I've already got like an aux kind of pre-made and already kind of good to go, I'm more inclined to try something. So like on my keyboards, for example, I'll have like 2 empty effects sends already like kind of pre-patched, good to go.
Okay.
So if I kind of feel like trying something, like it's kind of minimal effort to make it happen. Whereas, if I didn't have that template, I'd have to, pre-make I have to make an effects and then make sure it's routed to the final stem and all that.
Yeah.
So it's purely about streamlining the process and making myself kind of more inclined to be creative.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the with the VCAs within your session, then are the VCAs the ones that you're doing any automation on, or are the V's, because obviously VCA is purely just volume, right? Like, are you like, what is your reason for your VCAs? Because I know that the listeners, I mean, a VCA and a bus, obviously bus, you can have effects and all of that sort of stuff on. VCA is purely just a mute volume.
Yeah.
So obviously that was one difference, but I know that the listeners are going to wonder kind of why would you use a VCA over a bus in your template, and also what are you using your VCAs for specifically in your template?
Okay, well, actually, I better go back a step. They are technically buses. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Like, actually, they are technically buses.
Yeah.
Like I do have the option to put plugins on them, but I try to just start with automation and do the kind of heavy lifting on the earlier steps, like on the individual tracks.
Okay, fine.
You know that on the Brainwork stuff, they have that like the different channel selections on the channel strips.
Yeah.
So I actually have that on my buses, on the like stem buses. I'll have like a 4,000 channel strip on each channel with like a different channel inserted.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like voodoo placebo rubbish about like, that making it all feel a little bit different vibe.
Yeah.
But I like just having a little bit of the THD on each channel as well.
Okay, yeah.
Just a little bit of
saturation, yeah.
Exactly, just like a little bit. But then that's the only thing on the stem VCAs themselves. Everything else is just on the kind of individual channels themselves.
That's similar because I kind of have, you're kind of doing it similar to me, because I use the Slate virtual mix rack, and they've got that.
Love that one.
Yeah, they've got that VMR that where you got like the SSL desk, the Neve desk, and I do have VCAs, but I have like a drum bus, and then I have a bass bus, and then I have like a synth bus, and then a lead vocal bus and a backing vocal bus. But then I will then also have an all drum bus where the percussion bus and the drums go to, a bass bus.
Oh, cool.
An all music bus, which includes acoustic guitars, synths, and all of that as a music bus. Yeah. So similar to a VCA in a way, but just not as, I'm more broad, you're more kind of like separate. And then I'll have a vocal bus. But what I will do is all of my like vocal effects will go to the all vocal bus. So if I mute or solo the vocal bus, I'm still getting all the effects in your relative volumes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that's kind of why I do that. And then I put that Slate virtual mix rack on the separate ones. And then it goes to the mix bus and then a master bus. So it's kind of a similar thing that you're doing. You're just doing it on VCAs. Maybe I should use VCAs then more.
I guess it's, the same result, just a different way of getting there.
Yeah.
But then for me, like without making it kind of like fast food mixing, like those VCAs are they will be the mix stems. So like when the mix is approved, all I have to do is just, highlight those tracks, commit, and then that's the stems done. So that's just another way that I'm kind of able to kind of streamline the process.
Are those VCAs before your mix bus or after your mix bus? Are they literally?
They are before. So just quickly, my mix bus doesn't really have too much vibe on it.
Right.
So I could, I know it's a little bit, controversial, but I could print every stem through the mix bus. But, if I've got, again, this isn't correct or right or wrong. It's just how I kind of see it.
Yeah.
You know, if I've got like 32 stems going into a mix bus, and then I solo one of them and then print it, it's doing nothing. Like, there's no difference.
And also
it might just be like a little bit volume wise, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, and if you got a compression on it, it's not going to be true anyway, because obviously the gain going into the mix bus is going to be not the same as it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if I was on like a big old console and I had like a nice, dirty compressor on the mix bus, and it had like a big sonic difference, sure, I totally get it. But in the box domain, no difference really, is there?
No. So when you're talking then about kind of the mix bus, and then we just kind of touched on like the compression there, how are you doing your gain staging? Are you someone that really focuses on gain staging, or are you one of those people that put trims on stuff and you're just like at the end, like kind of, because obviously gain staging is a big part in a mix template.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess I'm kind of lucky because I haven't got any kind of like plugins really on the template. Like I'm not kind of looking for a certain level. I'll just kind of, when I import the stems, I'll just, highlight all and clip gain down until it's green, until the last fader's green.
I'm so glad you said that. I do that as well. I always, and I'll put money on it. No matter what stems I get, I'm pretty much putting it down by about 5 or 6 dB.
Dude, copy and paste here, man. Love it.
Like all the time. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but I just do. And
yeah. No, I mean, but I think because I know like maybe it's the right way of doing things, but like when you like add a compressor, like we're always going to add a little bit of volume to it, and then like another little bit of volume to it. So like I'm just giving myself a bit of headroom, to kind of get back up to that starting point with the processing on it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you and are you finding that once that you obviously put everything down, what you're putting it down to, do you ever find that you're having to put things kind of back up because you put stuff down too low, or do you find that actually in general when you put stuff down it kind of stays down and then the plugins are just doing
actually that's a good question. Maybe if I'm playing with plugins which are like kind of harmonic or distortion boxes, like Decapitator or Black Box, maybe I'll try pushing up the input gain to make that react differently.
Yeah. I find that with tape saturation. I just love distorting tape half the time. Just really shoving it in.
I live for that, man.
That goes on my mix bus, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Love it. But I mean, apart from those kind of tools, I think I kind of keep it the way that I start and then just kind of add as I go. Or maybe like if I get a rough mix and I'm kind of like liking the way it's balanced, or the band have said we like the way that it's balanced, I'll kind of just clip gain until it's a similar balance, and then I'll start from there. That's another thing that I might do.
Well, that goes into actually a really good question. Do you, when an artist is coming to you or a producer is coming to you for you to mix their stuff, do you ask them for, like for me, I ask for dry and wet, and then I can choose which one I want.
Yeah.
But I also have started to ask for them to bounce out the volume of their mix, so the stems match the volume of my mix in tools. I never really used to do that. I used to always rebalance.
Oh, nice.
But I've started, because I know in Logic there's the feature where you can literally just bounce out. I mean, in most DAWs you're able to, but you can just bounce out what the producer's rough mix is volume-wise. So if you just drag those stems into tools, it will be the same volume of stems. And I find it's just, again, I'm just saving time by doing that.
I think I should do that.
Yeah, well, I never did that. And then now I've started to do that. And I'm like, I'm actually saving about half an hour or even longer trying to match how loud the kick drum is to the vocal. If you just have them all volumed out, you know that what the listener or the artist or whoever's been listening to these rough mixes is going to be the same. So that's why I've started doing it. But, technically it might be wrong. I don't know.
No, but I mean, not at all. But just to play like devil's advocate, like, are there any like negatives? Like, for example, if there are, like their Logic session, the red lights are all over the place, but the balance is good. Like when they export it, like is the gain a little bit hot for you, or does it kind of just work out in the end?
Do you know what I find? I find because I also have Logic as well as tools, I will, depending on who it is, sometimes I'll just do it myself if it's easy enough. And I actually find that a lot of the time with the tracks, it's not the individual tracks that are too hot. It's just it's just the master bus. It's just they've just added.
Okay.
I always find that people are adding limiters and compressors, and actually that's what's making it go into the reds, not the individual stems. So
interesting. Okay.
That's more so than what I've been what I've noticed. However, yes, you are right. If the volume is up and they bounce, and you are going to go into distortion, then yeah. But that's why I asked for the dry stem, or I asked for an alternative stem, so I do have a backup. But I do find actually, like I'd say, 9 times out of 10, I'm lucky. It's not distorting. It's the master bus that's distorting from, not putting 0.1 on a limiter ceiling, for example, and it's hitting the reds kind of thing. It's more so than the actual stem itself.
Yeah. And then there's nothing worse than getting that super red master as like the rough mix when it's like -5 LUFS. And they're like, yeah, we love the sound of the rough mix. Oh, hell, here we go. Nothing worse.
Shouldn't ever be at -5.
I've had some that bad. It's like, oh, Christ, here we go.
Oh, it's funny.
Amazing.
So, kind of, what kind of goes on your like mix? I know you mentioned earlier that you don't really have much in your mix bus. I mean, first of all, do you mix into anything? Are you summing? Are you mixing into your mix bus during your mixing preparations before?
This is something very new to me, and I'm loving it. And it might be I haven't heard this before. Prick up some ears. Well, I think you know it. The God particle.
Joshua's
holy hell, man! Holy hell!
Yeah.
This plugin has made my life a lot better. Wow!
What, are you turning it? Are you? So you're mixing into it?
Yeah, and I'm sold on it. I'm a huge fan of it, man. The only thing on my mix bus is Jason Joshua, everything at 0, and I get to work, and I love it, man. I love that plugin. You're putting it on at the start, and are you doing anything within that plugin, or you're saying everything is just like for like a big duration of the mixing? I won't touch it. Really, just on the default, you're mixing into it. Yeah, like I will get pretty damn far until I look at that plugin. Like I might even like bounce like a kind of a test mix, sit on it for a minute, go get a coffee, and then if I feel like there's like a little tweak, like just a little bit of bass missing or a little bit of top end missing, I'll just reach for that plugin and just do a very broad like exactly, yeah. I love it, man. Oh, do you know what? I had to try it. I'm gonna have to buy it now. Oh man, yeah. Okay, I'll have to add it to my template. Have you got anything else on the mix bus? That's it. You've been serious? That's it, for real. But I'm always trying new shit. Like I'm always trying new stuff, and I've gone between having like 5 plugins to nothing to the God particle. I think I've tried everything at least once. What did you have before the God particle? What were your mix? So I love the Townsend compressor, the Plugin Alliance one. Yeah, I love that one. It's so good. Yeah. And have you played with Acoustica Audio before? Yes, I love their it's called like something. It's got like a harmonic distortion. They've all got really naff names, but they sound great. Yeah, but very CPU intensive. Oh, dude, it's a car crash using it, man. Like, so does a bit on. It's like, yeah, you might as well go home. It's game over. Yeah, I love their Pultec, the purple. Okay, yeah. Holy hell, I reckon that is maybe the best emulation I've played with. But it's such a CPU monster. It's horrible to work with. But yeah, it used to be just the purple Pultec and then the Townsend. For a long time, I loved that combination. So you were EQing before compression on your mix bus, is that correct? Is that what you were? Yeah. I don't really put much kind of thought into it. I just feel that like I want the EQ to be feeling good, and then I'll tame it. Yeah. I haven't really put much thought into compression before EQ or vice versa, but yeah. It feels good. So I mean, I try and do kind of tape, some saturation, then some EQ, then the compression, just to
control that, and then I'll put Oxford inflator in a limiter. That's kind of what I do.
That plugin is gold dust. I don't know what it does, but I love it.
So I said I never know. I don't know what it does, but it just adds volume. And do you find then that once you're then adding now just the God particle, that's then I guess classed as your unlimited mix, I guess, and then are you then going into a master pass where your limiting is happening, and that's then the final master? Is that your way?
So my mix bus is like technically green, like it isn't, it's under 0. So like if the client does ask for a main mix only, no master, I can just just delete the master and it's all good to go. And then the master bus is then kind of just gain and fixing any little details, really. Nothing too crazy.
Are you able to tell the listeners what you're using in your mastering stage?
Or
is that a secret?
No, not at all. We're all friends here, and I think to be fair, we probably all use the same stuff anyway. What's it called? The digital V3, the Frameworks thing.
The stereo spread on that is incredible. I always have it.
Dude, I love it, man.
I always have it on like 120 or 130. Just always.
Oh man, that's wide. Nice.
Yeah, what do you normally have it on?
Maybe like 110.
Really? Oh,
but in your defense, I think it's because the God particle does some widening anyway. So like it's like the second stage of widening.
Okay, yeah.
So like, hold fire on that one.
I'm gonna have to get this God particle now.
Oh man, I love it, man.
So you got the BX then on it, and then.
But so for me, like every plugin in my master is adding a little bit of gain every time.
Right.
I feel that like I want the end limiter to not really be doing like any like adding gain. I want it just to be taming what's going into it, if that makes sense.
Are you using multiple limiters then, or just one?
Sometimes, normally 2. So like, just quickly, the last plugin will be FabFilter L2, just god tier limiter.
Amazing.
And then I'll normally have that fader at 0, pretty much all the time. And then I'll just keep boosting increasing the gain into it until it's a competitive level. And I just find that it just feels a little bit less destructive if I'm kind of feeding gain into it rather than using it to increase gain, if that makes sense.
That's very, very good knowledge. I know a lot because I know a lot of people will always add when you look at mixes, they always add that volume with limiters, add the volume, and actually what you've just said there is like gold. And I don't know if it's technically what the textbook says, but it does sound for better, me though.
Yeah, and like I feel that like some plugins react better to gain than others. So like things like I'll have I find that FabFilter deals with gain really well. So then I'll have like a multi-band after the digital V3. And even if I'm getting like red lights flickering, it just deals with it.
So you got V3, then the multi-band. Are you doing any mid-side EQ, anything on the V3 before it's hit?
So here's where it gets again like a little bit like not controversial, but just like okay, like I'll do another volume boost on the MB, like another dB and a half, and even if I don't use it for any compression, I'll just use it as a gain stage.
Right.
I know it's a little bit like what, but it is what it is. And then same again, if I have like sometimes I might add a clipper if I want to kind of tame things without compressing. Which one, sorry?
The T-Rax one.
Oh, the other guy who works here swears by it. He loves it. I
love it. It's the best clipper I've used.
So good.
What clipper are you using then?
I mean, I'm using standard clip.
Oh yeah, I've got that as well. I use that on 808s for some reason.
Oh, dude. Great shout out. That's an amazing tool.
Yeah, I like the saturation, the slide thing. You can then pick what frequency it's at. Yeah.
Love that. So like I'll use that on like 5%, just hitting like kick and snare transients, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
And again, I'll use that as like another gain stage. And then you're a UAD user, right?
Yeah,
do you have the maximizer?
Do you know? I don't think I do actually. I don't have the UAD maximizer.
Man, that is such a like
I use the ozone
loud
one.
plugin.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I have to try it out.
Like I swear that thing adds a dB just by putting it on everything at 0. That thing is loud.
I'm gonna have to try it now.
I think it's really similar to the inflator. It kind of does loud, but there's more to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's more
very
like
similar to
loudness.
inflator.
It's not actually loud. It just feels loud. Yeah.
I feel that again. I could be wrong, but I feel that inflator adds a bit of like dirt or like a bit of saturation to stuff when you push it.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel that maximizer is more purely volume. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I see it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Nice. Interesting.
So like at the mastering stage, I kind of feel that I should be done with saturation by then, and I just want clean gain. So that's kind of why my reasoning for using it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing before the L2 is actually another limiter. It's the True Peak Plugin Alliance one.
Oh yeah, I know the one. Yeah.
And then I'll just do like maybe 1.5 dB on that if I'm lacking just a little bit of volume, and then she's good to go in theory.
And then you're just on the Fab Filter L2 for the last part. Just to Are you putting your ceiling at like I've seen this question around how low should the ceiling be? Should it be 1? Should it be 0.4, 0.3? I mean, I personally I don't look into it too much. I just go 0.1. I'm not going to get any overs.
Yes.
And then that's it. But then you watch some people and they're like, no, it has to be 0.4. It needs to be 0.5. So I'm just curious what in your template, what are you?
Yeah, man. I feel almost nervous talking about it because it's such a people on the internet have a real strong belief about it.
I've landed you in it now.
No, not at all. But actually, I'm the exact same as you. I sit at 0.1 and I never change it.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, because like volume wise, it pretty much makes no difference to 0 anyway, and it just means that if someone wants to do like a mastered for iTunes thing or whatever, it gets approved, and it still feels the same. Yeah. So for me, it's just a no-brainer. It just ticks every like format box.
Yeah, that's the way.
And I don't really put any more thought into it. Perhaps I should, but that's as far as it goes.
And what LUFS are you hitting, or RMS? What are you measuring in?
I'm going for LUFS. I think I go quite hot. I don't really care if I'm doing like a single.
Yeah.
I don't really care too much for like average. Whereas if I'm doing like an album, I'll kind of care more about the average feel across the track. But all I'm kind of looking for is I feel that with my template, if at the loudest part of the track I'm kind of hitting -6, that kind of feels good.
That's loud.
And then I don't, but then like I don't really mind if like the verse like is -10. That's cool. If anything, that's cool because then it's dynamic.
You're looking at the integrated or whatever it is, aren't you? Or whatever you call it.
Yeah. That sure.
I'm getting really technical here with you now.
Yeah. No. But like, do you find that like it's like when someone says like, "How do you drive a car?" You just kind of say, "You just do it."
Yeah,
like, and unless I'm like looking at it on my screen, I'm like, oh, I don't know, I just kind of do it. But yeah, for real though, I'll just kind of go to the hook, and then I'll just play with levels until I'm kind of hitting -6. And again, it kind of goes by genre as well. If I'm doing like a kind of heavy pop track, then sure, red lights are blazing. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Then if it's like a kind of a more chill ballad vibe, then I'll bring it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Every song's different.
Do you find that? Because I feel like I can get it louder if I use some mid-side EQ, like with your V3, your first. I'm finding that I'm doing obviously with the stereo spread. I mean, I know I'm going back a little bit here on the plugins, but I do a lot of kind of mid-side EQ. So I'll take out like a high pass at 20. On the mids and then 30 on the sides, and I feel then I can just drive that limiter just a little bit more, just because I've got that little bit, less low end louder mix.
That's exactly what I'm using it for. I'll have like a little filter on the mid, maybe like 20, 30, like you said.
Yeah.
And then I'll ride the stereo up to maybe like 90 or 120, depending on the song. And like you said, I feel it just gives you a little bit extra headroom.
Yeah.
One
thing I have started using is that mono maker. You know, on the
yeah.
Sometimes I put it
Do you
at
like it?
60 or 70. I just feel like when you play a track or you play an end of a mix, and you're like, I just want to get it that little bit louder again, or I want to tighten that bottom end. I mean, sometimes on like more dance records, I've literally monoed everything up to 90. just wax it up to 90. I'm just like, anything under 90 is going to be mono, and it kind of has worked. So I'm using it more than I used to, is what I'm saying. I never really used to touch the mono maker. I don't know if that's something that you're doing in your template, but yeah, it's worth doing.
I think that's a really under utilized thing, the whole kind of filtering the sides vibe. Especially now that like a lot of music has more bass than ever.
It's probably why I'm monoing more.
But also, if people give you these loud references, and you kind of have to compete with it, you kind of have to do what you have to do to make it match up. Actually, another thing that I sometimes do is, if like the reference or the rough mix is pinned, I'll rebounce it at the same level as my mix, and then I'll put it in the same folder, and I'll say, just for a more equal comparison, here you go.
That's great.
Because I'm not gonna destroy my mix just to make it the same level as their rough mix if I know it's gonna be the detriment of the song.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I sometimes try to do.
And it's your job as well to kind of technically make it right as what. No one, people want loud mixes, but no one wants distorted mixes. You have to have a middle ground of it being loud, but not wrong.
Exactly. And you can still be loud by feeling. You can, if you've got like good gain staging and you're, good dynamics, it can feel loud. If there's like a nice lift going into the hook, that's arguably feels bigger than just a loud mix from start to finish.
That's why I automate sometimes the mix bus. I do.
All the time, man. Love that.
The last chorus is up 2 dB. The whole thing's going up. So sometimes I won't, but I mean.
No, but for real though, I think that's a really easy way to improve the mix, is just to play on that on the fader. And I love to do like a little, maybe the last 4 bars before the hook, I'll drag it down a little bit. Maybe I'll drag it down a dB, and then when the hook comes in, it will go back up to 0. But to them, it feels like it's lifted.
Yeah,
those little things. Love it, man.
Love it. Good. So talking about then automation, are you doing within your template? Are you doing kind of much automation on vocal riding? Because one thing I was saying this actually in the previous podcast is I find with older mixing engineers, they're doing automation on synths. When I mean automation, I'm talking volume automation here, mainly, more so than delays and stuff. But if we're talking volume automation, you'll find that the older engineers are doing volume automation on synths, guitars. They're literally manually doing everything. And then you get newer mixers now, and I'm a bit like this as well. I find I'm doing automation on delay throws, or I'm doing automation on reverbs. But because I'm compressing the vocals so much, or the vocals are so compressed these days when they're coming to me, I'm not really doing much volume automation on the lead vocal. Now, are you finding this within your template, Henry, or not really? Are you?
Yeah, I feel that to an extent. I think maybe the older guys, they had different source material. Maybe they stuff wasn't as hot perhaps back in those days. Maybe music nowadays for us is a bit more stagnant. I feel that
more compressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, for real, I think a lot of pop music right now is kind of, and I don't want to say 2D, but it's very much there's energy from start to finish. Maybe the energy moves a little bit, but A&R don't want people to get bored, so they kind of they insist on there always being something going on.
Yeah.
So I think music is a bit more full these days than maybe it used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love automating stuff. but I actually like automating frequency as much as volume. Like I'll split a keyboard into like three tracks, and then like I'll have like, you know, like maybe a more full bodied version in the verse when there's like less going on, and then like in the hook when there's like more going on, maybe I'll filter it a little bit. Those kind of things.
Yeah, I do that with vocals. I verse, pre, and chorus, similar kind of thing as well. With, you know, and change to how much low end you have in the bottom end and that kind of stuff. That's great information, Henry, to give out, because I think it's frequency is so important. One, in your mix template and making everything kind of glued together, and secondly as well, what you're touching about is the volume of the mixes. Normally you'll find that, like I said earlier, the less low end you got in, the more volume you're going to get. You're going to be able to have more headroom to get louder. So that's a big thing as well.
Sure.
Like automating frequencies. I'm
Yeah,
going to do that more often. You know, I don't really often automate frequencies on the instrumental, unless there's an issue,
I mean, like really really broad stuff, like in a hook, if there's like, you know, a dozen musical elements going on, and like, you know, there's, you know, like a dozen things all with like 100 hertz in them, you know, I'll just take a few of them that aren't, you know, they're kind of background instruments, and I'll just filter them to just, you know, maybe make the note audible but not like the rumble, if that makes sense. Those kind of things.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry, after you, man.
Oh no, I was just going to say, is there anything else that you do within your template that I guess that is, you know, good knowledge for the listeners to know?
I mean, I love paralleling stuff. Drums, vocals, God, you name it.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing that I'll automate a lot. Like I'll have like the parallel down in the verse, perhaps, to make things a little bit more dynamic.
What are you talking here?
And then in
parallel.
Oh, like let's say drums to start with. Like I'll have like the parallel, like, you know, maybe down 5 dB in the verse, so like the drummer feels a little bit softer. And then, because also, like, you know, when you're working with samples, you know, which, you know, I think we all are nowadays, like it can kind of feel a little bit flat sometimes. So anything I can do to kind of return some dynamics, I'll do. So, you know, I'll ride the parallel, you know, in the verses, and then bring it back up for the hooks, so it kind of feels like they're hitting harder, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's really cool. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
The amount of detail you go into, Henry, with like the feel of the mix is, and this is what I always try and say to people, like mixing is a feeling as well. You know, it's as well as the engineering side of it. You've got to feel it, and it's got to have that emotion throughout the song. And so, you know, you're doing that obviously by the parallel stuff to make it feel.
Because I feel like it's really easy, and I'm guilty of it as well. It's really easy to get kind of caught up in the technical and the, you know, the zeros and ones of the mixing process, when I bet that all of our favorite mixes are just the best songs. Like I swear that all my favorite mixes are just actually great songs that feel good.
And recorded
and then
well.
When you actually exactly. And then when you actually dissect it, like the mix itself probably isn't anything like groundbreaking. It's just, you know, it's just done the song justice, and it feels good. I know that's really cliche to say, but like I was in a rut for so long of just chasing like sonics, when really, like, if I'd have just thought about what feels good or what is best for the song, I'd have probably got a better result half the time.
I think we all go through that kind of stage, don't we? We're all like, because, you know, we all watch YouTube, we're all watching different mix videos, and you're like, oh, I need to do it like this, or I need to do it like that, and then you're like, oh, am I doing it right? So it's, you know, it's great to hear that as well, that you kind of go more of the feeling more so than the ones and zeros.
For sure.
So what advice then would you give then to any up and coming mix engineers, or kind of what's your advice that you kind of wish you knew I guess when you first started out, that you can give our audience some advice on? That's a very big question.
No, not at all, man. I mean, like, there's so much that I wish I knew, kind of, you know, years ago. I guess a lot of it is just patience. You know, I feel that, like, every time that I feel like, no, there's so much, like, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of in mixing. You know, like, you'll get into what you feel is like an area of progression, and then you'll have a couple of like rough mixes, and then it's proper up and down.
Yeah.
And nothing's overnight. We've been doing it for years now, and we're still learning every single day.
I'll never stop.
And we're still making mistakes every day. But for real though, like we're still learning every single day that we do it, and just the more that we do it, the better we become, the quicker we make decisions. And also I feel that the best thing that I've kind of taught myself is to just go by first instinct and just gut feeling, because if I feel a certain way about a file or a sound the first time I hear it, that's probably the best thing for it.
Yeah.
Like I feel that now that we've got so many tools at our disposal in the box, and 1,000 EQs, that there's almost too many options, and it kind of slows me down a little bit.
Yeah.
If I just kind of go, right, this needs to be brighter. Okay, Poltec has a nice top end. Go. Don't overthink it. Sounds good. Okay, close that window. Next instrument.
Yeah.
Like
there is too many options now, isn't there?
Yeah, for real. Like I feel like I actually went the other day. I actually went and deleted half my plugins, and I haven't missed any of them because I've still got a dozen of each one anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel just
that's good willpower.
Gut feeling and exactly, man, for sure.
Them.
Like I don't need that extra EQ. I've already got 5 different Poltecs. But yeah, man, I think just don't overthink anything. Just if it feels good, go for it. Don't look at the meter or the gain, the gain dial. If it sounds good, it is good, because I remember back in the education days, it'd be just touch the compressor, just get that needle flickering just a little bit. Whereas in the real world, heck no, get that thing fucking spanked, and then it sounds good. Yeah.
That's great advice. Well, Henry, thank you so much for coming on to this episode. I know you're an absolute busy guy and fantastic at what you do, so we really appreciate it. So thank you very much for giving out the advice and the session templates and mix preparations and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you.